On a bone-chilling, wintry evening, the roads teemed with crowds. Everyone was celebrating the holiday cheer like it was an all-you-can-drink eggnog party. A happy little household strolled past cheerfully, yapping non-stop about what a ridiculously wonderful and enjoyable time they'd had. Suddenly, they collided with an unusually gigantic fellow blocking their path like a living traffic cone. The small child gazed upward, utterly astonished by his immense size, eyes bulging like she'd spotted a real-life giant from a fairy tale gone wrong. The tall youth simply moved aside to let the household through, pondering why he must always make himself smaller so others could get by. As he navigated the throng, he gloomily understood he was the sole person present who felt utterly isolated, the only walking Christmas tree without any lights attached. He proceeded toward the underground train station but abruptly halted when he spotted something odd. Glancing sideways, he noticed an elderly fellow costumed as Saint Nick slumped on the icy pavement. The unfortunate senior was hunched over from the chill, attempting to protect himself from the harsh flakes like a human snowball. Beside him rested a crooked placard requesting passersby to share their wildest desires with Santa. Ordinarily, he would disregard such street theater, yet today marked Christmas Eve, the very anniversary of his parents' fatal mishap. Touched by the sight and a hefty dose of holiday guilt, the tall youth chose to retrieve his billfold and extract some currency. In addition to the cash, he offered a rice pastry he had recently purchased like a generous weirdo. He gently set the meal and notes before the senior, but in an instant, Santa seized his palm with astonishing power like a bear trap on steroids. The elder pleaded for him to voice a sincere desire, insisting he genuinely wished to repay the generosity. Startled, the youth regretted his good deed instantly. Great, I've adopted a crazy street Santa, he thought while straining to yank his limb free. But he discovered the old man's grip remained immovable, not shifting even slightly, no matter how hard he tugged like it was stuck in a vending machine. Though physically powerful himself, the youth was stunned to realize he was being utterly dominated in strength. The elder implored urgently, explaining he could not return to his settlement without fulfilling a request. With no alternatives left, the youth inquired whether the old man would finally release him if he disclosed his longing. He inhaled deeply and contemplated what he should truly request at this moment. The youth requested to claim the jackpot, but the elder declared that desire lacked authenticity and insisted on a true one, rolling his eyes harder than a bored teenager. He grew quiet, pondering what a heartfelt plea would truly entail. He recalled the void within him and how he had always yearned for relatives who would never desert him. Thus, he expressed his desire for a spouse as kind as a bunny and a child as adorable as a mischievous weasel. Santa's face brightened immediately, claiming he could almost smell the profound sincerity of that request. "Oh, I can sense the genuine loneliness from here," he cackled. The elder grinned with relief, noting how fortunate he was to encounter such an isolated spirit. Yet the old man's face shifted into a frightening expression as he vowed the desire would be fulfilled. He clenched the youth's hand more firmly, blessing him with a lengthy, joyful existence brimming with delight, while leaving a purple bruise as a not-so-subtle souvenir. The youth wrenched himself loose and fled, declaring that Santa had lost his mind completely. The elder shouted after him that all the residents in Santa's hamlet were cheering for his chaotic triumph. Sometime afterward, the underground train raced through the gloomy darkness. Seated in the carriage, the youth stared bewildered at the violet mark on his wrist. He struggled to comprehend the bizarre statements the odd stranger had uttered on the avenue. Internally, he questioned why he had confessed such an intimate longing to a total unknown. Gazing at an advertisement of a joyful household within the train, he acknowledged he simply craved that identical sort of contentment. The youth shut his eyes wearily, quietly hoping to experience joy just like everyone else. Abruptly, an unfamiliar scent permeated the air, and he started to sense an icy shiver. He awakened disoriented and griped about a pounding head, entirely baffled by the events unfolding. When he fully opened his eyes, the environment delivered a huge shock. The youth realized he was confined within a timber enclosure being hauled by a cart. He panicked upon noticing he wore almost nothing, was shackled, and trapped in this strange location like a discount gladiator in a bad isekai story. Peering aside, he spotted a fellow with flowing locks who seemed to be another captive. A different, enigmatic, and severely injured man gazed at him in total quiet from within the enclosure. Observing the bound individuals surrounding him, he wondered if he had somehow arrived in medieval times. Overwhelmed with disbelief, the youth attempted to grasp the incredible predicament he had entered. He strained to overhear the sentry's discussion but found he could not comprehend any of the language. "Fantastic, even the locals are speaking fantasy gibberish," he muttered. He observed the ancient surroundings and noted that those nearby possessed fully European appearances. Uncertain whether this was a nightmare or actual events, the youth became increasingly distressed. He ultimately accepted the reality and determined he had somehow arrived in a different realm. Trembling from the frost, he looked at his own exposed feet fastened to the base of the enclosure. Seeing another captive lifeless in the corner, he wondered if the individual had perished and decided he must stay alive. To combat the freezing, the youth apologized to the departed soul and started claiming his garments. He donned the deceased man's tunic to gain some warmth and withstand the low temperatures, muttering, "Sorry buddy, survival first." Lying on the wagon floor, he sourly recalled Santa's vow about bestowing his desire. The youth questioned whether this dreadful circumstance was the joy the elder had repeatedly promised, groaning, "This is is your idea of happiness, you wrinkly fraud?" He pleaded to awaken if it was merely a dream, unaware of how many days had elapsed since everything started. Confined in that dreadful timber vehicle, he noticed the convoy advance steadily onward without pause. As time passed, the youth deduced that all captives were being handled as property. He also started to grasp the actual purpose behind their transport by the warriors in this fashion. The captives were being moved purely to be auctioned to the highest bidder. The youth carefully watched the external activity through the metal grates of the wagon. The warriors arranged the servants in a line, and a figure resembling the town leader began selecting the finest ones. Although his dignity was hurt from being treated as merchandise, he viewed the transaction as a faint chance to flee the enclosure. Given his excellent physique, the youth assumed he would be purchased promptly by a local. He attempted to display a self-assured grin, nervously anticipating being the following one picked: "By me, I'm tall and useful." However, optimism shifted to disappointment as they traveled past multiple settlements, and no one displayed any interest in him. The wagon persisted on its ceaseless voyage, traversing paths bordered by thick woodlands. The youth stayed imprisoned in the enclosure as the exhausting expedition continued beneath the escort of the guards. Drained of energy and reclining on the ground, he started questioning the purpose of persisting in this manner. In this instant of agony, he remembered his mother's guidance to always embrace life completely. He recalled her kind expression, asking him if he had fully comprehended that vital teaching. Weeping quietly inside the wagon, the youth beseeched his departed parents for the fortitude to withstand everything. The recollection of Santa assuring him the holiday desire would be realized overwhelmed his thoughts once more. Filled with raw fury, he condemned the very notion of joy and hoped this realm would simply perish. With resentment overtaking his soul, he grabbed a metallic utensil he discovered on the enclosure floor. Desperate to terminate the torment, the youth contemplated suicide right then using the utensil. Yet when he pressed the pointed end against his throat and sensed the sting, he withdrew immediately. Nope, not dying like a rejected kebab. Understanding he did not wish to depart in this fashion, he wept, recalling his grand vision of possessing a household. While hearing a pleasant tone drawing nearer, the youth jerked his head upward and saw someone extending a slice of new loaf through the opening. A lovely lady with flowing chestnut locks emerged before him, beaming in an incredibly tender manner. She addressed him warmly, offering the nourishment to soothe the tall youth's starvation within the enclosure. From behind the lady, an extremely endearing and inquisitive small fair-haired child emerged, timidly glancing at the captive like a curious kitten. The youth released the utensil and simply stared at the pair, deeply touched by that unforeseen moment. The lady and the small child retreated from the opening, leaving the youth lost in contemplation on the wagon floor, half frozen and half hopeful, wondering if Santa had just delivered his ridiculous Christmas wish in the most dramatic, painful, and hilarious way possible.